I didn't know that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Da, 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 da. Austin! Woo! All right, now Austin won the game. Now let me see your percentage. You don't have to show a partner. You don't have to flash it around. Just let me see your screen. What's yours? Got 5, 50s or 60s. Okay, we're playing 70s. Rock on. Now I'm looking for the highest. I think anyone higher than 76? 79. Anyone higher than 79? Which anyone higher than 79? Is that our room champion right now? All right, Sam Roberson. Sam is the one to unseat with the high percentage right now. So Austin won the game. Sam,
How did
like,
you win?
candy, Christmas candy. This is my Christmas candy. Happy to share. Yeah.
I know somebody gave me some unsalted
You
almonds.
like? Is that what you want?
No, not really. Not my first time.
All right. So I saw several things. Out of those couple of minutes. And you might think, dude, it was just a little computer game. But here's what I saw. I saw y'all working with each other, collaborating. Hey, I don't call that cheating. I call that working with each other. Now, there's rules and games, and every now and then we gotta, not collaborate or whatever. Not in this classroom. We like to collaborate in this classroom. So I saw y'all working with each other. I saw some nuts. I thought I knew that answer, but yet I got it wrong. So there's some self-chastisement. You wanted to get the question right. There was also the kind of that grasping for recall. Man, I swear I've heard of that before, but I can't quite place it right now. All these terms I think we're going to talk about in the next 10 or so days. Okay? If you have a background with it from any other social studies class, great. You talked about it in Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so's class. You've read this book. You've seen that documentary. Great. I'm going to bring it to you from the Georgia standards perspective. I'm going to give you the nitty gritty, what you have to know. And the more we get this vocab down clean, the farther we can go with, the higher level conversations. So that is why I introduced it to you. If you felt good, with your 70% or whatever, you're on the right track. If you saw a term that Briley said it well, he's like, Bacon's Rebellion, what's that? Well, when I get to Bacon's Rebellion, you're going to lean in. You're going to know that it was on Bookit, and now I'm teaching it to you. It's okay if you had some stuff that you flat out didn't know, because it's all that's coming to you in the next couple of weeks. So that's how we'll use Bookit. Oh, and then the other thing I saw, or actually I think what I hope I will see, is that some of you have that inner competitiveness. And Kate, I can't, she's been competitive since day one in my class. She talks to herself, and she snaps, and she hits the desk and stuff like that. I hope that whether you admit it to yourself or not, right? I hope that you will take yourself to a place of studying because you want to do well on these simple little games, right? So whether it's paying attention in class, taking good notes, or flat out studying instead of TikToking for a couple minutes at night so that you do well in these games, right? You will find yourself, I hope you'll find yourself wanting to compete with yourself and with your classmates from these simple little games that we do. And this is not the only game we'll do, right? I've been brainstorming and I've been building a couple of different review games that are far more than just looking on the computer. We're going to get active. We're going to have some real competitions, and it is going to be centered on review. I'm going to trick you into reviewing several times this semester. So lots more to come. The more that you do well in class by taking notes, by studying, by reviewing yourself, the more that you'll be able to, kind of succeed in these review games. I will also share this Bookit link. I've already made them for all 5, so they already exist. I can tinker with them a little bit, but by and large, they kind of exist for what I'm going for. I'll share with them on Google Classroom, and you can play by yourself. Again, you might chuckle to my face, but you got 10 minutes in the car, you got a road trip, whatever, or you just want to kind of review before the benchmark exam. You can play these Bookits by yourself. You can play solo, or get real crazy. You can get yourself get a game together and actually play against each other. So I'll share these Bookit links. They aren't secret. They aren't proprietary. I'm happy to share them with you. So go ahead and close the computers at this time. That's all we're using them for right now. What I handed out to you as I was walking and as you were playing the game, I handed you out today's notes. We won't do a notes page today. Okay, I don't want you to think that it's every single day going to be some new fill in the blank notes. However, some of these topics lend themselves to the follow along notes, and we will take a fair amount of notes in this day. These are the notes of the day. We are walking through the colonies. We started yesterday with what? Jamestown, which was the what?
The first permanent.
The first, what's the key word? Permanent, yeah. The first permanent colony in the Americas. But first is not only, and it's not last. We're going to walk through the rest of the colonies as well. I think it's pretty iconic. It's pretty known that there were 13 original colonies. We see that in the 13-star flag. Got several examples throughout the room, but the circle of 13 stars is a pretty famous flag from the Revolution. And so we're going to talk through the 13 colonies. We're going to talk through them by region, though. Okay, so I'm not going to do a day on each one. That'd be 13 crazy long days. We're going to talk through these colonies by region. And first up is, we're going to go north to south, the New England colonies. Okay, so Jamestown will fit into, when we talk about Virginia, we talked about it in isolation because it was the first one. Now we're going to walk through the colonies in order, north to south, and we're starting with the New England colonies. So the big theme here is colonial America. We're talking about colonial America. I'll just show you a map. So so we're just straight up sure about what we're talking about. This is what, today we might call this the East Coast, the Eastern Seaboard, right? Do we see ourselves on this map? Yes. Our present location. Yeah, we do. What chunk of colonies do we belong to? Southern colonies, right? SEC, right? We're part of the Southern colonies. So I do think that this chunk of history is a little more interesting than hard to understand Mesopotamia because, boom, we're talking about ourselves. We're going to be talking about ourselves. In just a couple days, we will talk about the Southern colonies, and the history of Georgia fits into that, of course. But today we're talking about the New England colonies. When I say New England today, what's something that comes to mind? That phrase. I think I heard it.
The Patriots.
New England Patriots. Oh, so they play football in all 5 of these states? Why are they the so-called New England Patriots? Okay, so there's Patriot, and you might push towards the Revolutionary time period with that. But I'm talking about their label as New England. Why do they call themselves the New England Patriots?
Historic.
I like it. Getting there. Huh?
They're up north.
They are up north. It's a regional identity, right? They play in Boston, Massachusetts. But by calling themselves, and this is a modern example, I always try to bring it to today, the New England Patriots are saying we represent this whole region. Even though there's New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, we have a regional identity. Yeah, there's state borders, and we would call ourselves both members of different states, but there's a regional identity. Same thing here. The New England colonies, they have this regional identity, even though there are individual states. So that's the setup. We're talking about those blue states there. I've circled it for you. This will all be on Google Classroom at the end of the day, of course. And there's just another way to think of it. The northern states, the middle colonies, the southern colonies, it's really the same picture, just a second picture. Moving on. Okay, something super famous, right? And what you maybe have already learned starting from kindergarten onward that you can associate with the New England colonies is the Pilgrims. What is a pilgrim? What do you already know about the Pilgrims? What's that, Harrison?
Mayflower.
They're old. Okay, old Mayflower. I like that. There's gonna be a lot more on the Mayflower here in the next couple minutes. So I'm gonna go to my resident expert Haven when we get to the Mayflower. Thanksgiving. I like it. True. Austin, do you think you know the true story, or do you know that nice stereotype story? You probably know more the stereotype story than the true story, and I'm going to tell you the true story here in just a second. What was a pilgrim's big motivation? Like, why were they? Why did they? And so again, we're talking old world and new world. Why did they depart the old world in order to cross the Atlantic Ocean and arrive in the new world?
Because of the religious difference.
Not God, gold, and glory. Because of?
Religious difference.
Yes, and also says religious differences. A pilgrim is someone who travels because of religious, to find religious freedom. A pilgrim is a separatist. And I have that word circled for a reason. They are separating themselves from the Church of England. This is important because we're also about to talk about the Puritans, and the Puritans are slightly different because they didn't separate, they just wanted to reform. But a pilgrim says, church is broke, we're leaving, and the pilgrims go on this voyage, separating themselves from the Church of England, and they do this in the year 1620. So now let's try to connect multiple things at the same time. Jamestown started in what year? Excellent, 1607. And I said in the grand scheme of world history, it was a short 13 years, but what year did women finally arrive and it really becomes a permanent colony? 1620. We don't memorize a whole lot of dates in this class. Okay, I'm not obsessed with memorizing dates. I know that becomes a lot real fast. But let's make a connection. At the same time that women were arriving in Jamestown, the Pilgrims have secured funding and permission for their voyage. So all this is happening pretty much at the same time, 1620. That's when they leave Holland for America. Tidy little definition there for you. A pilgrim is one who travels travels to a place as an act of religious devotion. But world historians, I think that's all of you, how have we talked about a pilgrimage before? Not in an American context, but in a world religion context. Who takes a pilgrimage and why? Muslims take the pilgrimage where? To Mecca. Sam's crushing it up front as an act of religious devotion. So when we give this word to the pilgrims, and you have your little kindergarten play, and they wear the black and white clothing, that's not the only pilgrim on the face of the planet across all time and history. A pilgrim is simply a label we give to someone who does something for religious purposes. You may take a pilgrimage someday in your life for whatever reason, right? A lot of Christians do travel to Israel to visit the Holy Lands. I'm not saying that's a required action or pilgrimage, but it does kind of fit that word, right? Where if you take that trip, you're going on a pilgrimage to see the Holy Land. So a little bit extra on pilgrims there. I just kind of want to bust up the idea that this is the only group of pilgrims, or it's a word that only applies to this group. As you do your cutesy little Thanksgiving plays in kindergarten, pilgrim is someone who travels for religious reasons. Moving on. Okay, a little bit more about the New England geography. So these guys leave England, cross the Atlantic Ocean. They land in this patch of God's green earth. What do they find? Thin, rocky soil that is not great for farming. How is that an immediate distinction from what we talked about in Jamestown? What did Jamestown have in that regard? Good soil, fertile soil, suitable for what? Growing money out of the ground. Form of tobacco, but they literally were able to grow crops from the ground. Not the case in New England. New England's economy is based on fishing and shipbuilding. It's actually not in your guided notes. I added that because it's a really important note. So if I were you, I know you got some white space to the side there. I would indicate New England economy is based on fishing and shipbuilding. How did they build ships at this time? What was the key material? Wood. So what they have is trees, right? Now my father-in-law is involved in timber here in Georgia. He cuts trees. We have a timber industry. There's timber everywhere, but New England timber at this time was a key product in building ships, key part of their economy. So shipbuilding, fishing, and the timber that comes from that, this is what made their economy. Not the type of stuff that you would grow seasonally or a cash crop, tobacco, cotton, etc. Here's how we start to have distinctions in the colonies. We're not growing tobacco everywhere. We're growing certain products in certain places because it's suitable to that economy. Short growing season, cold winters, that fits into what I just said. More mountainous than other areas. So just a distinctly different geography than than Jamestown that we've already talked about. And we're going to have this conversation with all the chunks of the colonies as well. So you got to build in your brain a little bit of a comparison chart. How do they make money in the north? How do they make money in the south? And why? This is the type of critical thinking that we're going to get after. So the pilgrims, they're on their journey. They arrive in the New World. How does that journey go? It's a 60-day journey. Okay, so pretty fast in the grand scheme of things. On their ship, they leave with about 100 individuals. I think it's 70 men, 30 women. They arrive with a +1. How in the world do you arrive with one more person than you left with?
Someone gave birth.
That's exactly right. Someone gave birth on the ship. So they left with, I believe it was 101, and I'm sorry, I should have that fact. I always like to have all the facts. They leave with 101 and they arrive with 102 because there was a baby born on the ship. So that's pretty significant, right? The child was maybe literally born in America, never having been in England. They land in Plymouth, and what's the famous, at this point it'd be a kind of a tourist attraction. What is notable about Plymouth?
Rock.
The Plymouth Rock, okay? There is a location where they say, I've never been there personally, they say this is the rock that the Pilgrims stepped on when they got off their ships here in America. So the iconic, the famous Plymouth Rock, irrelevant whether that's the actual rock, it is the location, Plymouth, Massachusetts. And this is where they decide, this is where they start their colony. Here's a real significant piece of what they did. They signed the Mayflower Compact. Now Haven, you said Mayflower, right? Earlier, we're talking about Pilgrims. What was the Mayflower? The actual ship, yeah, the name of the boat. Today, isn't it a brand of flour? Mayflower flour at the grocery store? Is what? Oh, I thought you said glue. Glue. Anyway, you're relevant, my bad. Sidetrack. The Mayflower is the ship that they sailed on, okay? And that's a famous name in history. But more important, what I would want you to associate that name with is the Mayflower Compact. What is a compact? Fancy word for, Sam said the word I was thinking, agreement. You could come up with a variety of synonyms, but it's basically a binding legal document of some sort. You may have a compact with your parents about allowance, a compact with your parents about curfew. I don't know how you guys roll in your families, but it's kind of a formal agreement. Well, the Mayflower Compact was signed before any of these 102 individuals left the boat. And what it said, what it was actually about, is it gave the Pilgrims a structured government before they even left the boat. And it established the ideas of self-government, self-rule, and majority rule before they ever even left the boat. Why do you think it was important to sign this thing before they even left the boat? You guys are thinkers. So let's just fast forward. Let's say that this, history changed. They leave the boat without this agreement. How do people start behaving? Yeah, according to their own interests. Maybe, rational actors are going to take things in their own interest. Maybe they turn against each other. And at that point, do you think it would be possible to negotiate self-government majority rule? Yeah, no. If they left the boat, it would have been Lord of the Flies, chaos, anarchy, whatever phrase you want to use. So their leader, he said that we're going to sign this thing before we even get off the boat. And if we don't agree to it, we're going to stay in this boat for the next however many days until we do. So that was a pretty powerful negotiating technique, I would say, that got them to agree to this very important document. Here's a picture. Obviously, it's not a photograph. It's open to artist interpretation, but this is them in the bowels of the ship negotiating and agreeing to this contract. It's significant because it establishes self-governance, and quite frankly, it is the beginning of what we will know as American democracy. Majority rule, everybody has a voice, you get to cast your vote to represent what you believe. Like, these are themes that we're very familiar with today. It's not a government class, but when you walk next door next year, you're going to hear about the Mayflower Compact again in this regard. So, pretty powerful portrait. This is the Mayflower Compact. I'm not going to read it to you by any means, but pretty simple, right? The grand scheme of things, it's not that many words. These days government documents are hundreds, thousands of pages, whatever. This is just a real simple governing document, and all the things I said. It sets up majority rule, self-governance, etc. Questions on the Mayflower Compact? Let me tidy up here, and then we'll take our bathroom. So the big statement was that this is the famous quote that came related to the Mayflower Compact, is for the general good of the colony, that everyone will be obedient and work towards a common goal. So, that's pretty simple language that says, hey, we're all in this together. and let's do things. Sanal's dancing. Sanal's got a beat, right? We're all in this together. It was signed. So it was signed by everybody on the ship. And when I say everybody, who do I mean?
Probably just
Not probably just the men, right? Everybody agrees to this, but the only signatures were the men. And I know that's still hard to stomach for us. As we talk about this in 2022, it doesn't make sense that there was a whole whole gender excluded from these type of conversations. And it's hard to wrestle with, but we're going to keep having these types of hard conversations. We got to understand what they believed. And then obviously today we can understand that that's not the norm and not how we should behave in politics and government. So yeah, so now you're exactly right. It was only just the men who signed. So put a little pause button there, and we can take our bathroom break, take that brain bank. When we come back, we got a lot more to get to. Feeling good, Austin? You won the game?
what exactly?
Okay, which one are you picking? The white
Girl
Nike
queen.
skirt?
Oh,
I just said that on the recording.
yes.
Oh, it's live.
I don't know, but I just said.
Are we live on
real quick.
YouTube?
Go. It's a video for people who are absent. I'll post it. So.
You scared me yesterday saying this circle. I thought you would have it like that now.
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't want to post it with skin. Come on, y'all, get. What are you doing? You're the slowest people I've ever seen.
I'm sorry. She's gonna get the fuck up.
Whoa.
Just remain simple, guys.
That's the makeup.
You got like a freaking
Stone cold stunning.
I think around the freaking dude, she's not
What the fuck up your bag is something bigger.
So you're dead.
maybe she improved in like 2 days.
So you're dead.
Well, I'm dead every day.
What's up, Chelsea? What are you doing?
I got taken.
You're not having the rest of that.
I see you not the rest of the time.
Who's on here?
All right. So, come on in, find your seat again, take a seat. Check it out. Some of you have realized what I did. I have started, like I streamed these classes, and here's why. I'm trying to stream one of every class I do, so that in the future, I can just, like, let's say a student misses a particular class, I can just send that link to that particular class. So I'm trying to build a library of all the classes in U.S. history, and of course that's going to take some time, but in the future, I probably won't video the classes once I have a class at every type. So that's the reason there. Just like act normal and don't chuck gang signs at the camera or whatever. And then of course, if you're absent and I share that video with you, it's for you to watch and basically see our class. That's that. I'm simply explaining that. The other thing, I don't intend to be like podium lockdown like a preacher the whole year, but I know myself and I know I'll walk around and I know I'm really not supposed to, so I'm kind of like just trying to lock myself behind the podium just for a little bit. So otherwise I'd be all over the room and breathing on you and such like that. All right, so now tell me, what is probably the most famous aspect of these pilgrims that we've been talking about?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the first Thanksgiving and all the stories that surround it, some rooted in truth, some totally made up. Let me point out that the reason there's pumpkins on my presentation right now is because this all fits the idea of the first Thanksgiving or the season of the first Thanksgiving. So here's a couple of true facts about that first Thanksgiving. It's basically a celebration of the positive relationship with the local Indians. Initially, there was a positive relationship with the local Indians. There was one Indian in particular, his name is Squanto. And maybe some of you played the character Squanto in that kindergarten play, right? Squanto is usually the single character that we use to represent the Indians. Again, whether you're doing that cutesy kindergarten play, or guess what? The guy is actually a real person. There's actually a whole real history to Squanto. A little bit more about Squanto. Here is a
How you say that W word?
Wampanoag. Wampanoag.
Wampanoag.
Yeah, now that's on video for forever. So thanks, Gary. Here's a little bit more about Squanto. Again, an artist's representation, not necessarily a photograph. Squanto was a friend to the Pilgrims. He was helpful to them. Just like those first settlers in Jamestown had to figure out how to grow and build shelter and survive, well, these Pilgrims needed to do the same thing. In a way, the stories are very similar in that regard. Well, Squanto was a friend of the Pilgrims. He was helpful to them. Here's why he was able to be helpful. He understood their language. He understood English. Now, the reason he understood English kind of has a sad backstory. He had previously been kidnapped by other Europeans who were in the region. So they kidnapped him as a young man. They take him from his native land, which is the so-called New World. They take him back to the old world. He travels around a lot. There's a lot to it, right? There's a whole lot of history there. This might be one of those things where I'm trying to give you a little bit of curiosity and you can do your own reading because I really only have that much time to talk about it. In the New World, Squanto, he learns European customs. He learns European cultures. He most importantly learns English. He is then brought back to the New World, or his original home. And in the meantime, here's the sad turn of the story. His whole tribe had been wiped out, dead, from what do you think?
Disease.
That's right, disease. Is it on the screen? His whole tribe had been wiped out from disease. So weird twist of fate. Squanto survives because he is kidnapped, but upon his return, even though he's alive, and of course that's a good thing, his whole family, his whole tribe group is wiped out. He actually joins another tribe group. He goes from the Wampanoag to the Patuxet, and that's, don't get wrapped around the axle around those hard words to understand. And it is at this time that he connects with the Pilgrims. Now think about it, right? I want to try to paint a picture of the story for you. This Native American Indian comes out of the wood line. You are a scared white European settler. You've heard stories of these Native Americans, and what's a word, what's an adjective sometimes associated with them? Savages, right? Isn't that a song in Pocahontas? Savages. Anyway, savages. This savage is coming out of the wood line, coming out of the tree line to you. How do you approach him? What do you do? Well, guess what he says? Hello, in English, right? He starts speaking your language. And in fact, you find that this man is not a savage. You find that all that you've been told about these Native Americans, maybe it's not true after all, because this guy, Squanto, he's willing to help you. He's here to help you. And in fact, that's exactly what Squanto does. He teaches them to fish. He teaches them to farm. Here's a real unique little side story. This is extra. Every now and then I'll say this is extra. And what that means is it's not test material, okay? Now, I don't like talking about the test in the first place, but it's like truly extra. I'm giving you a little extra factoid. So this is extra. The way Squanto taught them to farm was by taking a fish, take a fish out of the river, it's dead, and you place that fish in the rows of your seeds, and that fish serves as what? Fertilizer, right? So even if the soil wasn't great in the New England colonies, there are tricks. There are tricks to the trade, and Squanto taught them how to do this using fish as fertilizer, and this is what leads to, one, their survival, and ultimately the first so-called Thanksgiving, which is actually a celebration of surviving the first year of the New England colonies. So 1621, they have a feast there are white European pilgrims, Native Americans gathering in a feast together. Is it around a table? Were there turkeys? Did they play football? Almost certainly not. All the traditions that we think are Thanksgiving, that's almost certainly not how it was observed in the first Thanksgiving. But the concept of eating and feasting and sharing peacefully, especially, that is what, that's the roots of our Thanksgiving holiday. And then, of course, in America, this is total extra. In America, Thanksgiving is not really a holiday until Abraham Lincoln declares it to be a holiday in the 1860s. So we're a long ways away from Thanksgiving, but this is the root of the story. This is how the first Thanksgiving story really came to be. And just an artist representation. You can totally get into the stereotypes. What do the natives look like? What do the Europeans look like? The foods that they would have had, etc. I will always challenge you to read the true history, and I've given you a couple of factoids about that. Oh, there's a couple extras there. Is that on your notes? So make sure I don't skip anything. November of 1860 or 1621. Nope, I don't think that's on your notes. So I'm going to move on. I pretty much said all of that. All right, John Winthrop, key character. Let's talk about John Winthrop. He is a Christian man as well, just as the Pilgrims were Christians. He's a Christian man, but he is the other category. He's a Puritan. A Puritan is different from a separatist. The Pilgrims were separatists who wanted to separate from the Church of England. A Puritan, think about that word itself. What root can you grab out of that word? Pure. He wanted to purify or reform the church. So that is his starting position. He does not want to break. Who else have we talked about as a great reformer of the church? Our world historians. Martin Luther. Yeah, you might remember he visited us and you made your own 9.5 theses in class. He also did not want to separate or break the church. He just wanted to reform it. So kind of in that same vein, John Winthrop and the Puritans have that same motivation. They don't want to break the church or separate from the church. They just want to purify it. It's a very famous phrase, and he said it in a sermon. And what he said is that we should be a city on a hill. People are watching us. We need to be perfect, free from sin, good with our morals. We are an ideal society. As people look at us as a city on a hill, what they should see is a shining light, a demonstration of Christianity in action. Have you heard that phrase before? Have you heard city on a hill? Have you? Getting a half nod. I'm getting a half nod from some and a strong no. Okay. So city on a hill originates with John Winthrop. It does. But it also, let me take it back. It originates in Christian scripture. He's really just citing some scripture. He does get credit for moving that phrase forward with his sermon, but move past from that. What is something that these historical figures really have in common? Now, okay, we got John Winthrop, right? Black and white. It's a sketch. Now we got a photograph of 3 American presidents. Well, we know Winthrop's not an American president. What in the world do these historical figures have in common? Was that Riley? They all have landmark speeches, or in Winthrop's case, a sermon that talk about city on a hill. So this is David Swanson trying to just bring you some current application. Winthrop, this is how Winthrop says it, and I want you to what really stands out to you. He says, "For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us." What stands out? The spelling, right? Well, is he illiterate? Is he uneducated? Or is that how they wrote back then? Yeah, he's certainly not an uneducated man. He's the leader of the colony. So I like how you guys chuckle, because very often we assume that the way I do it is the way to do it, right? The way I spell is the only way to spell. John Winthrop, very educated man, but he has a big different spelling. Anyway, so that's interesting to look at. Let's look at what President Kennedy says. President Kennedy says, "Today the eyes of all people are truly upon us. And our governments in every branch at every level, national, state, and local, must be as a city on a hill." So he's using the phrase in the same regard. We are being watched. We must be perfect, ideal, right, just, moral, the example for the world to look at. And he is hearkening back to John Winthrop's message. He talks about Massachusetts Bay Colony in the rest of his speech. There's that connection. Ronald Reagan, he very frequently, I don't have to pick one speech because he very frequently used this phrase. America is and always will be a shining city on a hill. That's actually part of his campaign speeching, his slogan. He used this phrase. So you see how history, circle, he's taken John Winthrop's words, which are actually biblical scripture language, and he's using it in the 1980s. And then, most recently, President Obama. We'll talk a lot about presidents. Of course, we're not even at presidents in our learning yet, but we're going to talk a lot about presidents and the significance of Obama in particular. He says, as the earliest settlers arrived on the shores of Boston and Salem and Plymouth, they dreamed of building a city on a hill. And as the world watched, waiting to see if this improbable idea called America would succeed, and he says, we today must also be as a city on a hill. So just to show you that we're not talking about ancient history, bring up John Winthrop. He's not just an old dead white guy. He's not irrelevant. His words still ring true with American presidents still today. Bit of a cartoon here. What do you think? Let me ask you. Is America a shining city on a hill?
Yeah.
I got a no, I got a yes, I got a we went down. Why no? That was real fast no, Sanam. Why is America not a shining city on a hill? Was that Chelsea? I swear that was you. Who says no and wants to defend their answer? Austin, why is America not a shining city on a hill?
We're all black.
Oh, yeah. If I were to look at America, right, if I'm looking at this thing on a hill, I'm not seeing much shine. Is that what you're saying? Anyone want to say yes and defend it?
I do.
Yes. Why?
We got greatest military, non-racial, and everybody's equal, and other countries ain't lying.
Let me paraphrase for you, if I may. Despite our issues, we still a pretty good thing going. Christian says, we have issues, but look at us, we still are pretty good. So this is one of those maybe uncomfortable conversations, or I'm challenging you, and then I'm going to cut the conversation off because we have to keep going. Look at this picture here. Shining city on a hill for who? Who's on the hill? Oh, the rich people, a whopping 1%. How about this? What if this is your perspective? Shining city on a hill, except for you. You're not welcome. Who's not welcome? What is this political cartoon maybe about? Immigration. Probably current events. Probably talk about immigration. So that's a big idea, real big idea. I know I take a diverging and try to give you some real current events. This is the kind of stuff, y'all who've sat in my room before in particular, it's the kind of stuff I hope you take home. Kind of stuff I hope you'll wrestle with, chew on. When I post it to Google Classroom, maybe you want to go and screenshot it and be like, hey, Dad, we talked about this today. What do you think? Maybe I hope too much. Maybe you don't take it home to the dinner table. I don't know. But these are the kind of conversations that really matter. I can give you facts. I can give you book it. I can book it you to death. And or we can have these big conversations too. All right, moving on. A little bit more about the New England colonies. So the big idea was that they wanted still kind of we're on Puritans here. They wanted to create a covenant community. And in this, they practiced Athenian-style direct democracy, which, much like the Mayflower Compact, self-rule, majority rule, starts to lay the foundation for American governance ideals. My world historians, what is Athenian direct democracy? I've taught you this before. Athens, where? Athens what? Greece, excellent. So what is this direct democracy? Everyone has a vote. I've done you the favor of even pulling up. You want me to go back?
Yeah.
I've done you the favor of pulling up slides you've already seen from my world history class. But yes, in Greek week, I love Greek week because it does start to set the foundation for U.S. history. Isn't that crazy? World history sets the foundation for U.S. history. But we talk about how the Greeks had this revolutionary idea that one person, one vote. You are one person, you get to have one vote. Now, who gets to have that one vote? The men, the free men at that, so take slaves out of the equation. But nonetheless, we are setting the foundation for democracy. Do you remember demos and kratos? Rule by the people, power to the people. So this is a conversation we've kind of already had before about direct democracy, etc. So moving on to now, let me give you a criticism. I'm never going to give you the good side of things without telling you how there's a criticism to whatever that may be as well. Here are some criticisms of the Puritans. They are not perfect Christians. They do have flaws and warts, and here are some of them. The religious leaders would not accept dissent. What is dissent? Sam, say it a little louder. Conflicting ideas. I love that definition. The religious leaders said, my opinion is the right opinion, and you are not allowed to have one of your own. There are some famous, well-known today revolutionaries, I would say, who did dissent. And two of them are Roger Williams. Roger Williams was a Puritan who came with John Winthrop. He probably bought into this idea of a city on a hill, but guess what? He was vocal about some alternate opinions or just his own opinions on all things related to the Puritans. And because of that, he was banished, right? We love our community, our covenant community, until you disagree with us, and then you're on your own. Well, Roger Williams goes on to form the colony and then now the state of Rhode Island. So he took his banishment, which is certainly a negative thing, right? You're leaving your community, your safety, your resources. He turns it into arguably a good thing. I'm sure he had some uncomfortable days, but he turns it into a good thing. He forms the colony of Rhode Island. With him, let's talk about a woman, Sanaa, right? It's not all about men. Anne Hutchinson, she is another one of these dissenters. She is accused of, I'll show you their pictures now. She is she did the radical thing of hosting women's Bible studies in her home. Now that might be how I say it. Oh, say it, Haven. Oh. She hosted women to gather and read the Bible and discuss it. Okay, some Lisa Turker stuff right here. She hosted women's Bible studies in her home, and because of that, she was seen as a dissenter. She was seen as a radical. She did not conform to what she was supposed to as a Puritan woman. She was also kicked out. She joins Roger Williams in Rhode Island. So these two names are associated with Rhode Island and pretty important. They're pretty influential in terms of challenging all Puritan thought. A little bit more on the Puritans. If you haven't caught it yet, obviously they're very strict. Yes, ma'am?
Where's Rhode Island?
Where is Rhode Island? I'm going to make you find this. You know how I do. Haven, find Rhode Island.
Well, I know it's in America.
So think about it's in the region we're talking about. I'm not sure if my laser's exactly on it, but for the rest of y'all.
Really small. I don't. Yeah, it's the smallest.
Haven, you can let my laser right here. I'm not sure if my laser's exactly on it. It's that small. But it is one of the smallest rectangular states.
Where's that?
Help him, Marlon. You mind? Haven asked a good question. Where's Rhode Island? Rhode Island. I'll find it here for you. I never want to leave a question unanswered. Right here. Rhode Island is one of the smallest rectangular states. But guess what? Let me advance the conversation. How many senators does it have? Two. How many senators does California have? Two, right? They get the same. So that's a different conversation for government. But even though it's a small state, it still has the same votes in the Senate. You got it? Cool. Good conversation. Good question. A little bit more about Puritans. Maybe you've caught on to it in our conversation so far. They're very strict. What type of things do you think they were against? What type of pleasures of the world do you think that they banished? Women wearing pants. I like that. That lasts for a long time, Anna Kate, actually. I can show you some photographs of women in the 40s having their bathing suit length measured because it's too risque. Yeah. So women in pants, that goes on for a long time. What else? Huh? Illegal what? What do you think they thought about alcohol?
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, ixnay on alcohol. What do you think they thought about dancing?
Oh, no.
Oh, no dancing, right? No dancing. What do you think they thought about theaters and the traveling circus?
No.
Yeah, so they were very anti-enjoyment. Some of those things were seen as worldly, and that just fits into the strictness of the Puritans overall. A little bit more on women's roles, since we're there, is a patriarchal society. What is a patriarchy? Or what is patriarchal? Nobody? What's a matriarchy?
Well, that's a great.
Woman dominated, okay? Maternal, think about it, I'm helping you with language here. Your maternal grandmother is on your mom's side. Your paternal grandmother is on your dad's side.
Oh, so
Yeah,
it's
so
ran by men.
patriarchy. Some of you have not listened to All Too Well, the 10-minute version, because Taylor Swift takes on the patriarchy.
Mhm.
All right, now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Patriarchal society, man dominated. Basically, all the societies we talked about in world history up to the modern era, patriarchal. Women were supposed to be subservient. The classic example of what women's work: wash, clean, have babies. Sit down, shut up, don't speak unless spoken to. This is the Puritan society. You can disagree with it, but it's true. And this is kind of the woman's role in society. This next one here, I'm gonna take kind of a pivot. Sometimes I gotta explain tiny things that fit into the bigger picture, and especially I wanted to get it on your notes. This is King Philip's War. I'm not gonna take a whole bunch of time and explain. I'm simply gonna say that in King Philip's War, it's a major event. There's conflict over land ownership. Just like we talked yesterday, the Indians saw communal land ownership, right? It all belongs to us. Whereas the white man saw boundaries and fences and fighting over their land. Well, understandably, this led to conflict. King Philip is a particular revolutionary. His name is Metacom. And suffice it to say, it's a bloody conflict. In the end, about 7 out of 8 Indians are killed. 7 out of 8, like whatever percentage that is. And about half of the whites are killed. So it's a super deadly conflict. All those feel goods we had, Squanto to the Pilgrims and whatever, definitely lost it related to King Philip's War. I hate to say it's not mega significant in our curriculum, but it's not. Okay, so you have a couple notes about King Philip's War. If you're a military historian, you can go ahead and read some more on your own. If you got questions, I'll be happy to answer. But I'm just going to let you capture this in your notes, and then we'll move on. I don't do that often, but sometimes I just got to give you a little bit of a nugget. All right, who wants to play a game? Hey, who wants to play a game? We're going to play a game. You got this on your notes? We're going to play a game called Snitches and Witches. Sounds fun. And here's how this game works. I am going to... Still deciding how I want to do this. I'm going to come around and you have to let me whisper in your ear. Is that okay? I mean, COVID and all, can I whisper in your ear? What I'm going to do is whisper in your ear, and I'm going to tell you across the room. I'm going to tell some of you you are a witch. I'm going to tell some of you you are not a witch. And then upon me completing that, okay, don't make it weird. I'm just like when I come in, let's let me whisper in your ear. When I'm done with that, what you have to do, here's your assignment. This is your daily grade for the day. This is your daily grade for the day. You have to form the largest group possible with no witches in it. Okay, so that'll be your task over the next few minutes after that. So just sit, chill, let me whisper to everybody, and then think about, how you can form the largest group possible without any witches in it.
No, you don't.
You gotta think.
Then you gotta make a big group without any witches.
Yeah.
That would be a simple
the sun goes down, I'll let you take control. I can feel the paradise. Tonight, high sun. Swearing this will be the last day. I can do for you. Do my bad habits lead to and I know that I say yeah. Just looking for me around. Cause
Hey, and keep it to yourself.
Conversations with a stranger.
I haven't got my home yet.
I got nothing left to lose. Do my bad habits lead to
Right here?
Conversations with a stranger. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose. Or do my bad habits lead to and I know that I say yeah.
Find the witches. Go. Find the witches. Make a group without witches. If you're in a group with a witch when this is over, you failed the day.
I'm not a witch. I promise. I'm not a
If you find a witch, you can kick him out of the room. If you find a witch, you can kick him out of the room. Get out. Get out.
I want to keep caving out.
What's the group? Biggest group without a witch. Why are there two groups?
Yes.
You find a witch, you can kick him out of the classroom. Get those witches out of my classroom.
She got minutes.
Quick.
Now play turn.
All right, what's the group? You got 1 more minute to have the largest group possible.
Hey, bro, y'all with us? I think I know
No, get 100 for the day or 0 for the day. All right, I need to start seeing the group. You need to start telling what a group is.
Hey, he's not in our group. He's not in it.
We gotta get real.
Oh my God.
About 30 more seconds. The count the size of the group.
Get away, Haven.
Well, I'm not, but okay.
Yeah.
All right, are we at our final groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
So, count. Give me a number. Give me a number here. What's the size of our group?
No, he's not.
Give me a number. What's the size of this group?
All right.
Kale's not in our
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We got
He's
you got a
not.
witch in your group? If there's a witch in this group, you all get a 0.
Are you serious?
For the day. There's a witch in this group, you all get a 0 for the day.
5.
Yeah. Hold still. All right, pause. Pause. All you pause.
Let's split up. Let's go away here. You guys.
Hey, you from Sus.
All right, pause. My turn right here. My turn right here.
Sure.
How many? 2
I'm pretty sure.
and 1 group. What was the number? Is this a subgroup?
Yes, we have to split
Oh, what
up.
are you
Six or
guys?
seven.
What are we here? Number 6?
1, 2, 3.
Ladies, what do we got?
What's our number? 1, 2, 3. 13.
13. All right.
In case.
There's a witch in any group. That group gets a 0 for participation for today. Okay. Witches, raise your hand. Just Harrison. One.
Just Harrison?
Witches, raise your hand.
Somebody's lying. You're kidding.
Hey,
No
y'all
witches.
lying.
There's no witches in this room. Let me say it again. There's no witches in this room.
Harrison is.
Raise your hand if I said you are not a witch. Do you see how easy it is to divide a community?
So we keep hanging out.
Take your seat, and we will now have a conversation about the Salem witch trials.
We thought we ate.
And we will now have a conversation about the Salem witch trials.
I love that. No, I don't want to hear it.
All right. Obviously, I set that up,
We have found a witch.
but do you see how easy it is to divide a community? What did it take for me to make you believe that there were witches amongst you? Just the suggestion. Now, we are going to round out, we're going to finish with talking about the Salem witch trials. Arguably one of the most famous aspects of the New England colonies. Okay, Salem, Massachusetts, that puts it in the New England colonies. Were there witches in New England? What are some stereotypes of witches? No pointy hats. Okay. What? Long nose. Green face. Witch's brew. Doesn't your mom really like the Sanderson sisters? Hocus Pocus and whatever. Pretty sure she does. Okay, all right. Well, that's the stereotype of a witch. I feel like you just described the Wizard of Oz. What then is a witch? What's a real witch?
Oh my gosh, we watched
We watched
that movie.
Okay,
And
what's the
John
movie?
Proctor died.
Yeah, it's not a movie actually. It's a theater
It's
play.
not the village.
Yeah, what is it?
Crucible.
The Crucible. That's right, the Crucible. Excellent. I'm gonna go tell Leslie that y'all crushed it with already knowing about the Salem witch trials. Well, here's the deal. Witchcraft and sorcery and the occult is a very serious issue with the Puritans. In 1692, so we are, we're decades into the founding of the colonies at this point, right? That first pilgrims came over in 1620. We're talking 70 plus years later. In 1692, several young Puritan girls seemed to be bewitched. Now, what would you say is seemed? What does that possibly mean? How pretending they were sick? Okay. What else?
They danced naked and then she ate the bird's blood.
Dancing. Okay, I'll be honest, you guys probably know a little bit more about the Crucible than I do, so you guys have those examples, that's good. What ages were these girls? They were, so it really, if you want to try to find the starting point of Salem witch trials, these girls were ages 11 and 7, and who were they? Or maybe I should say, who was their daddy?
The preachers.
Oh, but preachers' daughters are certainly not bewitched.
Yeah.
So it must be someone else's fault, right?
Yes.
Whose fault was it? You guys know a lot of the story. This is good.
It was Tisha.
She called it
Okay.
in.
Now you guys are telling me about the characters in the book, and that's good.
It was their servant.
Yeah, that's right. And where was she from?
Africa.
Haiti. She was Haitian from the basically Bahamas, the Caribbean islands. And in Haiti and in the Caribbean islands, they observed different religious practices, voodoo, than the good, upstanding Puritans would. So naturally, it is not the fault of these young white girls, right? It is clearly their Caribbean servant who has bewitched them. Here's the mega theme for you. They accused a bunch of outcasts of bewitching these young girls. It could not be these girls were playing a prank. It could not be that these girls were lying. And guess what? And guess what?
Yes.
Once these girls were so far into it, were they going to start coming out and telling the truth?
No.
And this is how the mania, the craziness, the fury of the Salem witch trials expanded. Haven, how did it feel to be called a witch?
I've been called a witch my whole life.
Not the answer I was expecting. How about when you knew it wasn't true? For my game, you knew that I said you're not a witch, right? So how did it feel to know that someone was literally accusing you of a mistruth? Bad? Felt bad?
Oh, it didn't feel great.
Didn't feel great. Harrison, how did it feel to get kicked out at the last minute? We weren't too sure of your loyalty. Were you volunteering to maybe help the team's grade? You said, I'm a witch, I'll leave it. Who was the third? Taylor, right? Taylor, you were a witch.
No, we brought her back.
You brought her back. Okay. Well, here's my take. Here's what I would give to you. You guys, inside of 7 minutes, defaulted to that accusatory behavior, right? And we're not talking with lives at stake. We're not talking court of law. We're not talking like the actual situation. You guys, in 7 minutes, turned on each other. I just want you to be aware of what you're capable of as humans. Kind of scary, isn't it? Kind of scary. Here's how the witch trials actually shaped out. And I know if you guys know the Crucible, you probably know a lot of this already. About 200 women would be accused. Is that a hint? About 200 women would be accused, 100 put on trial, and about 20 of them, actually I should say 19 of them were executed as women. One was executed as a man. Is that?
My man.
How was Doc Proctor executed?
He was hung in front of the place.
Oh, is that what happens in the book?
He was
one that
Jesus Christ.
Oh, they got pressed with the stone, but he didn't. That didn't happen to him in the movie. There was anything you.
I don't want to cross like the literature with the real story. Okay,
So they pressing.
yes, pressing. So 19 women were executed. 1 man was executed, and it was by pressing.
What does that mean?
They
That's
stacked
so
stones
much.
on them and
God.
made things.
Right. That's why I was laying down. That's why, because what they did was they put stones on his body until what? What can't you do if you have
Can't
hypothesis? And was he accused of being a witch?
No.
They were trying to get information out of him. So it's basically torture for information, and they were trying to get that much out of him. Now, what is the stereotype for how these witches were killed? Burn them at the stake. Burn them at the, how did it actually happen? So this by itself, like this type of imagery, and now burning at the stake has happened throughout history. But in the Salem witch trials, it is actually not true. They were not burned at the stake. Okay, so I've given you some of those interesting. Oh, check it out. Here's one of the big themes. One of the big themes is that the devil is real, and he's on the prowl in Salem. And because the devil was on the prowl, there had to be tests to determine if you were bewitched.
That was crazy.
What are, maybe y'all know, what are some of the real, I'm talking bizarre. What are some of the bizarre tests for if you were a witch?
Oh, they would throw the person like in the water that was stacked, like tie their body to the thing and they throw them in the water, and if they got out, they were a witch. But if
And
you
if they didn't
died,
get out, they drowned.
they drowned.
There was one where they throw salt on them.
Okay, a salt one. I'm not familiar with that. Here's one on the simpler level. Raise your hand if you have a birthmark. A large-ish birthmark. Witch. If you have a birthmark, clearly that's the occult coming out through your skin. That's the devil himself trying to come out through your skin. I'm not, Haven's giving me the face. I'm not saying it made sense. I'm saying this is how they rationalize it. You want to know the craziest one? This is my opinion. I've done a lot of reading. This is the craziest one. I got to read it. I just got to read it to make sure I get it right. They would make a little cake out of rye, basically rye bread. It would be made with, hang with me, okay? This is like stranger than fiction, but it's true. It would be made with the woman's urine. It would be fed to a dog. And if the woman felt pain while the dog ate this cake, she was a witch. You can't make that up, right? That's how weird it was. That's how weird it was. So just let me give you this. It is a result of that patriarchal society. Because many of these women were single, independent, attractive, bold, making their own way in life, not conforming to the Puritan values. So the patriarchy had to what? Right? And Taylor Swift wasn't there to sing for him. So the patriarchal society was largely responsible for this. And then cascading accusations, sometimes family feuds, right? If you wanted to get back at your neighbor, what would you do?
You would, if you would,
Witch.
then you get their land.
Witch, tell me that you're not. Tell me that you're not a witch. Tell me you're a witch. Once that accusation was out there, let me give you like a big life idea. Once that accusation is out there, it's hard to walk back, isn't it? So we are going to continue to see this in U.S. history. It's going to move from witch to communist. We're going to have we're going to have a Red Scare, which is basically the Salem witch trials, except instead of calling people witches, we call them communists. And so we're going to, this theme, this idea, it doesn't go away just because this was old and bizarre and in the 1600s. Finally, and you can see the pictures there. And on the humorous side, Hocus Pocus is super loosely based on the Salem witch trials. Okay, the Sanderson sisters. That actually is a Puritan family. If you really wanted to get into the history of Hocus Pocus, you would find that there is that much true to the story. Obviously, I know it's kind of a fun movie that we watch at Halloween time, but Hocus Pocus is super loosely based on the Salem witch trials. And just finally, we kind of already gave the reasons for witch stereotypes: strong, independent women, family feuds, lies and untruths, all that kind of stuff. Oh, here you go. This is on your notes. This is on your notes. Can I say thank you for letting that simulation work out? It was really good. Don't spoil it for my next block. You probably won't even see him between now and then. But thank you for letting that work out. I hope that you'll chew on that. I hope that you'll think about that. Whether you are an accuser or accused, I hope that you'll live different based off of that simple, almost silly little simulation. Because you're not a witch and you don't have to be a snitch. And maybe that simulation we did kind of drove that home to you. One more screen and we'll call it a wrap for the New England colonies. Last screen here is, so just kind of setting us up for, we're going to continue to talk about other colony groups, but to round out the New England colonies, the economy continues to grow based off of shipbuilding and fishing and trade. Every colony has its own characteristics. And guess what? Those people in the South need ships. Those people in the North need tobacco. Obviously, we're set up to have a trade relationship. Spread continues to happen. And ultimately, we have 13 colonies that are going to declare independence from England. And we're going to have ourselves a little American Revolution. How's that sound? How's that sound? I told you we're going from north to south. So tomorrow we'll talk about the middle colonies. Isn't that easy to remember? They're in the middle. And we'll round out with the southern colonies. I hope the story's weaving together for you. We're having small, interesting extras like witches and snitches. But I hope the whole story is kind of coming together for you. Just to show you where we're going to be at tomorrow, we will talk about the middle colonies. And I'm going to do my best to keep giving you the visuals and trying to bring it alive for you. Seeing as we do have a handful of minutes and the computers are right in front of you, let's do a blitz book it, okay? Maybe I've talked about a couple of phrases that have locked in your brain a little bit better. So go ahead and get back to book it. Call this a book it sandwich. Sometimes I like to start with book it, teach, and then finish with book it, and maximize the use of our time. Let me say this, you see it on your screen, this whole unit, I know it's on your syllabus, and I also know you don't memorize the syllabus. This whole unit is called Colonies to Constitution. So as you think about chunking U.S. history, this whole first chunk, we talk about starting with the colonies. We're going to go all the way to the writing of the Constitution, and well, by gosh, what's in the middle? Something pretty significant. American Revolution, Revolutionary War. So this is our first chunk, our Unit 1, Colonies to Constitution. We'll play this game again. Which game y'all want to play? We'll fight about it? Fishing. Do I have a vote? I got one vote for fishing.
Gold.
Do the gold.
Gold,
It's Gold Quest.
Gold Quest.
Oh.
What we got? We got to choose. We got to go.
Gold Quest, you can see everybody.
Racing.
Factory. Is that good for 5 minutes? Isn't that more intricate? I think that one's more intricate. Okay. Gold Quest. I chose. Steal from each other. I love it when you guys get angry at each other. All right. If you make in the 70s, I'll give you a piece of candy. Your percentage point is in the 70s.
70 or higher.
Or like it starts with a 7. Thank you. I'll get you.
Who took the goldfish? Who took the goldfish?